James Hartford had everything money could buy: a mansion overlooking the Pacific, cars that most people only saw in magazines, and a bank account that could weather any storm. But on that particular Tuesday evening, as he stood frozen in the doorway of his pantry, he realized he knew nothing about the woman who had kept his home running for the past 3 years. Maria was crouched behind the kitchen island, her small frame hunched over a plastic container. She wasn't stealing jewelry or silver. She was eating yesterday's meatloaf with her bare hands, tears streaming down her weathered cheeks, trying desperately not to make a sound. When their eyes met, the container slipped from her trembling fingers and clattered against the marble floor. "Mr. Hartford, I'm so sorry," she stammered, scrambling to her feet. Her accent grew thicker with panic, the words tumbling out in a breathless rush. "Please, I was just so hungry. I'll work extra hours. Please don't fire me. Please." James stood motionless, his briefcase still in hand, his tie loosened from a long day of board meetings and power lunches. He had eaten at a 5-star steakhouse just 2 hours ago, barely finishing half his meal before pushing the plate away. Now, watching this 50-something woman beg for forgiveness over eating his leftovers, something cracked inside his chest. "Maria," he said softly, setting down his briefcase. "When was the last time you ate?" She looked at the floor, her hands clasped so tightly her knuckles had gone white. "Yesterday morning, sir." "But it's okay. I'm okay. It's 7 o'clock at night." His voice was steady, but his mind was reeling. "You've been cleaning this house for 9 hours, and you haven't eaten since yesterday morning." "I sent my lunch money to my daughter, sir." The words came out barely above a whisper. She needed books for school. "I thought I could wait until I got home tonight, but I got dizzy around 5 and I just—" Her voice cracked. "I'm so sorry. This won't happen again." James had prided himself on being a self-made man. He'd grown up in a middle-class home in Ohio, worked 3 jobs through college, and built his tech company from the ground up. But somewhere along the climb to success, he'd stopped seeing the people who made his comfortable life possible. Maria arrived before he woke up and left after he went to bed. He left her checks on the counter every Friday. He assumed that was enough. "Sit down," he said, pulling out a chair at the kitchen table. "Mr. Hartford, I should really— Maria, please. Sit." She lowered herself into the chair like it might break beneath her, perched on the edge as if ready to bolt. James opened his massive stainless steel refrigerator, staring at shelves packed with food, most of it untouched, much of it destined for the trash. Imported cheeses he'd never opened, organic vegetables that would wilt before he remembered to cook them, meal-prepped containers from his personal chef that he rarely ate because he preferred dining out. He pulled out containers systematically, setting them on the counter. Then he grabbed plates, real plates, not the plastic containers she'd been eating from. He heated the food, something he couldn't remember doing in months, usually leaving such tasks to Maria herself or eating out. "What are you doing?" Maria asked, her voice small and confused. "Making you dinner." He glanced over his shoulder. "Actually, I'm making us dinner." When James set the plate in front of her, roasted chicken, garlic mashed potatoes, glazed carrots, Maria's eyes filled with fresh tears. But she didn't move. Her hands stayed folded in her lap. "Maria, please eat." "I don't understand, sir." James sat down across from her with his own plate, even though he wasn't hungry. "I don't either." "Not completely. But I need to understand something. How long have you been going hungry?" "The dam broke." Maria's story spilled out between bites of food that she ate slowly, as if afraid it might disappear. She told him about her husband's death 5 years ago, the medical bills that had crushed them first. She told him about her 3 children back in Guatemala, 2 daughters and a son she hadn't seen in 7 years. Every dollar she earned went home to them. Every single dollar except what she needed for her tiny room in a house she shared with 5 other women. "My oldest, Rosa, she's so smart, Mr. Hartford. She got into university." "University? No one in our family has ever gone to university." Pride and pain mingled in her voice. "But it costs money." "So much money. The books, the supplies, the fees. I thought if I could just send a little more each month." "You've been starving yourself to send your daughter to college. She's going to be a teacher." Maria smiled through her tears. "She wants to come back to our village and teach, to give other children chances." "How could I not help her?" What kind of mother would I be? James set down his fork, his appetite completely gone. He thought about his own mother, who had worked double shifts as a nurse to help pay for his education. He thought about the times she'd probably skipped meals and never told him. He thought about how, after he'd made his first $1 million, he'd bought her a house and assumed he'd repaid that debt. But his mother had never been starving in silence while cleaning his home. "Why didn't you tell me?" he asked. Maria looked at him like he'd spoken a foreign language. "Tell you what, sir? That you needed more money. That you were struggling. You pay me good wage, Mr. Hartford, more than fair. This is my choice, for my family. I would never ask for more." She wiped her eyes with her napkin. "You've been kind to me. You don't yell like other employers. You say please and thank you. You let me have Sundays off. I have no right to ask for anything." The weight of his privilege hit James like a physical blow. He'd congratulated himself on being a good employer because he used basic manners and gave her the legally required day off. Meanwhile, she was rationing food and counting every penny, too proud or too afraid to ask for help. "How much does Rosa need for school?" "Mr. Hartford, no." "How much, Maria?" She named a figure that made James's chest tighten. It was less than he'd spent on his watch, less than his car payment, less than he'd dropped on a single dinner with clients last week. That night, James couldn't sleep. He lay in his king-sized bed in his designer sheets, staring at the ceiling, seeing Maria's face when she'd been caught eating leftovers, seeing her hands shake, seeing her beg not to be fired for being hungry. The next morning, he was waiting in the kitchen when Maria arrived at 6 a.m. Her eyes widened in alarm. "Mr. Hartford, is something wrong?" "Sit down, please. We need to talk." He watched fear flash across her face as she lowered herself into a chair, and he hated himself for it. He slid an envelope across the table. "This is for Rosa's education. The full amount for this year and the next 3 years, plus a buffer for unexpected expenses." Maria stared at the envelope like it might bite her. "I can't accept this." "You can, and you will." His voice was firm but gentle. "Consider it an investment in a future teacher. Mr. Hartford, I'm also doubling your salary, effective immediately. And that's not charity, Maria. It's me recognizing that I've been grossly undervaluing the work you do." He paused. "I've also arranged for meals. You'll eat breakfast here before you start work, lunch during your break, and you can take dinner home with you every night." "This isn't negotiable." Maria's hands trembled as she opened the envelope. When she saw the check inside, she gasped. The sound that came out of her was something between a sob and a prayer. She pressed the check to her chest, tears streaming down her face, her whole body shaking. "My Rosa can stay in school," she whispered. "My baby can stay in school. She can." "And Maria?" James waited until she looked up at him. "I want you to bring me pictures of your children. I want to hear about them. I want you to tell me when you're struggling. You're not just the person who cleans my house. You're a person, a mother, someone who matters." Maria stood up, and before James could react, she hugged him. It was brief and awkward, and she pulled back immediately, apologizing. But James waved off the apology, his own eyes stinging. "Thank you," she breathed. "Thank you. God bless you, Mr. Hartford. God bless you." In the weeks that followed, James's mansion felt different. Maria smiled more. She brought pictures of Rosa, Lucia, and Carlos, taping them inside the pantry door. She told him stories while she worked, her voice filling the empty halls with life and warmth. She no longer jumped when he entered a room or kept her eyes permanently downcast. But James changed too. He started eating breakfast at home, at the kitchen table with Maria, learning about her day before it started. He reduced his eating out and made sure the refrigerator was stocked with foods she liked, not just his preferences. He gave her Christmas bonuses and birthday gifts. He helped arrange video calls with her children, letting her use his study for privacy. When Rosa graduated top of her class 3 years later, James flew Maria to Guatemala for the ceremony. He paid for everything, the flights, the hotel, the celebration. He even went himself, sitting in the crowd as Rosa walked across that stage in her cap and gown, watching Maria sob with joy. Rosa's graduation speech was in Spanish, but Maria translated the important part. Whispering in James's ear, she said she became a teacher because of 2 people, her mother, who sacrificed everything, and a kind man who believed in a future he'd never see. James realized then that he'd been living in a mansion that had never been a home. He'd been surrounded by expensive things but starved of human connection. Maria hadn't just cleaned his house. She'd taught him how to be human again. She'd shown him that true wealth wasn't in his bank account but in how he treated the people whose paths crossed his own. On the flight back to California, Maria squeezed his hand. "You changed our lives, Mr. Hartford." James shook his head, his throat tight. "No, Maria, you changed mine. Because that's the truth about kindness. It transforms everyone it touches. The giver and the receiver, the wealthy and the struggling, the boss and the employee. In the end, we're all just people trying to make it through life, looking for small moments of grace and connection in an often harsh world. And sometimes, all it takes is seeing someone, really seeing them, to change everything."